Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything. Engagers, once again, we're here at the Professor Game Podcast, and we have Arek with us today. But before we kick off, Arek, are you prepared to engage?
Yes, sure, I am.
Let's do this, because Arek is not only a gamification specialist and all of these things, he's also a fellow Polish citizen, but he is a real one. I mean, I don't speak Polish. So he's Arkadiusz Siechowicz, right?
That's
his name.
Yeah.
I make my best to do some Polish pronunciation, but it's just the pronunciation with the words. I have no idea what I'm saying usually. So he is one of the founders of Gamehill, the Gamified Learning Platforms. And with his team, they are the winners of the Outstanding Gamification Award, as well as Best International Implementation of Gamified Learning Solution from London's LTA. And for the past 7 years, they have gathered vast experience in corporate and university learning. Their most recent addition to the platform is an AI-based adaptive learning module. So lots of exciting things. Aside, of course, from gamification, he does have a life. He is also passionate about any near future trends, including things like autonomous cars and robots, as well as things like hiking and working with his dog, Nelly, to balance all of the other things. So, Arek, is there anything that we're missing from that intro?
No, that sounded like very complete. Well, I could go on and on about myself, but it's about gamification in this podcast, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And talking about yourself, Arek, we always like to know, what does a day in the life, or a week, a month, what does being Arek look like in these days?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And the answer for me is that I love variety. So I actually don't have a typical day. And today was very different from last few days, because I went to our office, which I don't visit that much, even if it's in a very nice suburban villa. We have plenty of land around, so it's now beautiful because we are recording this in winter, so it's snowy there. And I did some recording, some videos of the Q&A for Gamehill platform, and some other bits on video. So that was my day today for the most part, and the remaining part I'm recording a podcast episode. So that's again something a bit unusual, but not my first podcast. And what else typically happens in my day? I love talking to the clients because majority of them, really most of the clients I talk to, are really nice, engaging people, and they really want to learn a bit about gamification and make their first steps in this world. And I get to be a bit of a guide and expert and a helpful hand. So that's pretty always nice, and I like that part of my days as well. Yeah. So, and there is a few walks with my dog as well, an occasional personal training. So yeah, that would be it.
That sounds absolutely fantastic, Arek. And there's many things that we could go on and on about that, as you were saying before. But we would like to know, this podcast is all about sharing your experience, and of course, for that to be as helpful as possible to our listeners, to the engagers. And we would like to know the story, Arek, right? The story of, sometimes things don't go as you were expecting them, and it is all about a fail or a first attempt in learning. We would like to know of your favorite failure, your favorite fail. Be there with you, listen to that story, and perhaps take a few lessons as well with you.
Wow. Sharing a failure, that's something that you don't do every day. But I agree that we can all learn from our failures. I think for that one, I would actually refer to an offline gamified event. I typically, a majority of my time is in online gamification, but that one was It's well, imagine it's a beautiful summer day, and we have a gamified event for 120 people, of which 110 are professional, ambitious women. So not very balanced group in terms of sex. And we had challenge rooms for them prepared. So the idea is you sort of split into teams and move clockwise between different rooms. And in each room, there are some challenges waiting for you. They are very, very different. Like some of those could be a design thinking workshop for 45 minutes. And then it would be about making 10 important phone calls within the next 40 minutes, which is a great challenge. I love it. Just do it. That's the name of it. And then you would learn to juggle and learn how to connect juggling skills with managing change. So, very different elements. And the day is going beautifully, and people are, engaged and excited. And the grand finale is in this big room where those teams meet around big circle tables. And in the front, in the center, there is my colleague who is the MC of the event, and he has, the full audio, the mic report. And we are planning to finish with an online game, sort of pub quiz format, that sort of thing. But the last points will decide which team wins. And I can sense, I was standing at the back, I was recording, supporting the event, and I can sense the tension. Everyone is really competitive. And we start with the first question, and the points are showing on the big screen, and someone shouts, "Well, it's not correct. It's wrong. We answered differently." And I say, okay, perhaps we are mistaken. Let's move on to the next question. And then the next question, and two teams shout, "It's all wrong. It's all mistaken." So
this is not working.
Yeah, this is not working. So you can imagine, everyone is after the full day of excitement, but, a bit tired, but really wanting to do their best in the grand finale, and the system is not working. And I can see my colleague Chris, who is standing there, and he cannot just reverse to a computer and start clicking and looking for a solution, because he has to stand there and talk to those people. Everyone is watching. So what do we do? And after a few trials, I just sort of connected with him and say, okay, we'll do this together, my friend. He keeps sort of talking to people, and I arrange our group of our colleagues into sort of judges for each table. So we take it all offline again, from the software to offline old school pub quiz, and we reorganized everything very quickly, and we were able to start. The emotions were there as well, because when you do things manually, people think, okay, perhaps you didn't notice my hand being the first in the air, but finally, they all accepted. We have carried out the quiz. We have nominated the winners. And the nice final touch was that there was, at the end, there was the CEO of the company thanking everyone for the day and telling some business stories to them. And he said, well, and the most important story we've just witnessed today at the grand finale. You all witnessed how the Gamehill team just, came together in a matter of, seconds in a big crisis, and how they reorganized. And I think that's a nice story for us. So we didn't plan for that. And that was an obvious failure. Don't get me wrong. We didn't plan for that. That was stressful. It's really properly stressful. But I'm so happy that, with a team of engaged people, you can sort of always come around and get through. So that was my favorite story. Yeah.
Absolutely. And would you say there's because I have an idea of a lesson that I could take from that, but do you have anything you'd like to say, like, wow, what was the main lesson from that experience for you?
Well, the first obvious one is always have a plan B. And the second is, don't rely on technology. If you don't have plan B, it will fail you. The Murphy's Law says it will fail you. So, yeah, that was my lesson.
Absolutely. And the other one, I think, and it kind of has to do as well with gamification and the company as well, is, having your engaged team. I mean, if you didn't have a team that was there for you, if it was, the typical, the image of the bureaucrat, right? No, that's not my job. If you have that kind of team, well, it would have been probably a more stressful failure than it actually was.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely phenomenal and very important as well. So Arek, let's go actually from that fail moment to another moment in which you actually had, what you would call full success. You went for this, and on the first or the second or the 10th attempt, it actually worked the way you wanted it. And we want to be there with you again. We want to see one or two maybe success factors of that story because we want to learn from that story. Can you tell us that story?
I think I might go a bit unorthodox here because I really believe in Kaizen, this philosophy of small improvements. Yeah, and so there were some big successes, and definitely the most prominent one was, getting those awards on stages in London and Amsterdam. But they were like result of hard work. But for me, if I was to name the biggest success, is we sort of produce. Well, I'm not sure what's the word, but we are all about gamified learning platforms for big companies, big corporations, sometimes universities as well. And we've always made it a point that if you want to have a gamification in a name, it cannot be mandatory. Okay, and it's not that easy with corporations because if they pay, they want 100% people to get involved. Why should we pay for something that not 100% of people participate? And up till now, we are so proud that we always made those implementations voluntary. There was never any sort of direct or indirect punishment for not participating. So that was great. And every time when I sort of test the platform for some clients or just visit it, and let's say, because I'm a gamification maniac, let's say I visit them on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday evening, and we have this notification that it pops up. Perhaps you might know it from other sites. Like I know it from booking.com, which is a website I choose my vacations, and someone is watching this with you, or someone is watching this product on Amazon or something like that. And every time I see this notification that in those crazy hours there is someone who is actually on the gamified platform and they are learning, and I know that you may sort of not like their work-life balance, but from the perspective of gamificator, someone who wants to engage people, well, that's amazing that people on their own, without this being mandatory, just go there and learn and develop and complete some tasks on, very different and strange hours. So I would say these are the small successes. Yeah. So it's nothing spectacular. But it's because I think it's still quite easier to make a short event. What we are really challenging ourselves with is engaging long term. I mean months. I mean even 2 years. That's really long period. And if people come back there and I see their notifications that they are there, I'm always like happy. So that's my success story.
And you should be. Is there anything that you would say is, and I don't know, one of the key things that you would draw from that? Like, I think one of the good things that we did here was this. And is there such a thing in there?
I think sometimes when we design or plan something, there is lots of effort in the preparation. And when things go live, you sort of, rest on your laurels and just, are happy that it's off we go. It's running, and the takeaway would be that we monitor whether people are engaging, and we try to look which tasks they are engaging more, what formats, what hours, when to give them new materials, and so and so. And I think the reason why they are going there and visiting the platforms on their own is that they know that there will be something appropriate for them and waiting, and so monitoring their behaviors is a takeaway for me, that it's good not to just put all your effort in preparation, but also into improvement after you go live. Yeah.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, Arek. So, Arek, we would like to know, because you've given us these stories of success, these stories of difficulties as well. And of course, that means that you have had experience. And with that experience, you probably have started to figure out the way you do things. And that's what we want to learn a little bit more about. Do you have a way of doing gamification? Do you have a process? Do you follow somebody else's process? How do you do it? Let's say a client comes in through the door and they want to do something. How do you approach it? How do you do all these things?
Yeah, sure. We have it a bit easier because we are 90% of our time is focused on one type of solution, which is gamified learning platform. So it's not like we are constantly coming up with different gamified formats. It's a lot of fun, but we just tend to focus on this one. So yes, there is a repetitive process that we always approach. We call it a gamification workshop, and sometimes it's an event, sometimes it's spread over many meetings. And the main elements would be, well, first of all, understanding the audience, the target group, as well as the goals of what, because gamification is basically about changing behaviors or engaging people into activities that they value, but they somehow don't tend to find time to do. I really like that definition that, you gamify things that, I know it's important. It's just not very urgent.
It's very important, but I'm still not going to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Understanding those two things is the most important element. So we keep asking or questioning either the client's representatives, as they typically are HR specialists, but we don't stop there. We try to get direct contact with the audience, with the direct target group. We interview them. We try to understand their daily life. And once we have a sort of a grasp of what's important for them, because one of the most engaging elements for gamification of the kind that we provide is that it's appropriate to my work life. It's appropriate. It's not something distracting. It's helpful. So that's the one element that we really want to dig into and understand it. And the second is the goals. So what needs to change? What do we want to change with this gamification? Again, sometimes people start with sort of too humble goals, as they say. We just want people more engaged, or we just want people more active. And we say, well, that's given. We will do that. But do you want people engaged into what? How do you want to direct their activity? Is it more sharing knowledge? Is it more understanding your business goals? Is it learning about products or services? Or what is it exactly that you want to change? And then they start to open up and set up the bar slightly higher. And that's when it's more exciting, when we actually get some ambitious goals. And it may seem difficult at the beginning, but then we have more fun in designing it. So that's the first part of the process. And then
absolutely,
yeah. And then we move on to choosing the tools, and the core tool will be the gamified platform, the Gamehill engine. But we choose, for example, narratives. That's a fun part because we do have some preset. We call them worlds. Like you can travel across Europe, or you can build a famous building around the world, or go to space. However, within all those worlds, you can write a very different narrative. It could be a catch me if you can sort of scenario, or it could be uncovering a secret or regaining lost knowledge. So all these different types of narratives or stories we build with the client. And again, we typically engage the client in this creative process. We don't sort of think of it on our own, because it typically is much more true to them and much more reflective of the organization culture. Even recently, the one that we had a case study on Gamification Europe conference, I would say 80% of the narrative was actually created by the client, only with our encouragement and help and short training in storytelling, which we do. So that's the very interesting, fun part. And then we sort of start building a curriculum or all the elements that we need to get across to the people, and also all the elements that we want to get from them, like what kind of input we want from them, what kind of questions we want to ask them or challenges we want to set. And then there is software work, as in we tweak and tailor make the platform a little bit for every client. And that's also quite interesting because I would say almost all, we are very client driven. You can already hear that. But even in the software development, it's we have our roadmap, but then again, almost every bigger client comes up with an idea for a feature that we didn't come up with before, and that's actually exciting to be able to have our own team, to be able to, with our own team, create those features for them, and then our solution is richer, better, and I like that because it's like not us playing the experts on the know-it-all, approach, but it's coming from different groups, different clients, different needs, and that's how our software is evolving. So I really like that approach.
It makes a lot of sense, Arek. Just a quick break before we continue with this episode. If you've been enjoying this podcast, I would really appreciate if you share it with your friends and family and on social media. On Twitter and Instagram, it's @RobAlvarezB and the hashtag ProfessorGame, all one word. And on Facebook, you can find the Professor Game page. Thanks in advance for your engagement. And Arek, talking about, your process, we talked about the process, all these things, and is there, in your experience, is there something that you would say is sort of a best practice? Something, again, that maybe you do and you say, well, we almost always do this, or we recommend people always to do this or that. Is there such a thing that you've seen in gamification?
I think there would be a few of those. The first one that comes to mind is that I think hopefully you like this one because it's people don't read. Okay. or specifically, people don't read manuals. People don't read instructions or notifications or anything like that. Like 90% of the times when someone asks me for help with their computer or something like that, is just that they didn't read the notification on the screen. It was just I just follow the steps that are written there. And coming back to the gamification, design it in a way that something that is intuitive, that something other than manual or instructions is leading the user through the gamification. So we refer to like archetypes or things that are culturally commonly understood. Like, I don't know, if you have a map of countries and you start in one country, you can sort of expect that the next step will be go to the next country or the another one. So you know that there will be exploration and the map will grow. So that's like intuitive. And I love from another of gamification conferences, I think it was 3 years ago, Melinda was saying that the best UX or UI, the best interface for gamification is a story. And we really believe in that. So if you have a story, you know what to do. And games don't come up with much of instructions. And the funny part is when actually client thinks, okay, so how do we tell them what to do? Do you have any manual, or should we, prepare something or send out instructions via mail? And I have to be very patient saying, yes, of course, we can do that. We can prepare a nice infographic on what to do. However, it's not necessary, trust me. And it's really wonderful seeing how few, we have this chat communication, as you can, as in many softwares, you can sort of chat with the application and ask for help. And we don't need it that much.
And that's a very good thing. Yeah. Very good thing, Arek. And continuing with those recommendations, I know we've met quite a few years ago. This has been a long time coming. And have you, hearing to the questions, maybe listening to the podcast before, is there somebody you say, oh, I'd really like to listen to this person answering those questions in Professor Game?
So who would be another Guest.
An interesting guest, perhaps, that you could have in mind.
The first person I had in mind was Kevin Werbach, Professor Kevin Werbach.
Professor Kevin Werbach, yeah.
Yes, of the gamification course that actually started it for me almost at the very beginning. I think I had some concept beforehand, but back in 2012 he started it. Then 13, I think it was the big success. So he had just published an updated version of his book. So I think he has an amazing understanding of the basics of gamification. I've learned many different approaches later on. However, it always came back to me that the foundations were laid by Professor Werbach.
Absolutely. So Kevin Werbach. And talking about the same style of questions and recommendations, would you say that there is a book that you recommend this audience, the engagers, and why would you recommend that book?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't name one on gamification per se, as in specifically with a gamification in title. However, I think any good book on storytelling. That's what I would recommend, because gamification is not only about games, but it's also about storytelling. And even if you think about chess, we tend to look at chess these days as something, just very, very simple. But it used to be a story, didn't it? It used to be about bishops and kings and chivalry and, all those soldiers happening in front of you on the table. So storytelling, I think, is something that all the gamificators or people trying to get into this world should sort of level up on, so to speak.
Is there any book that comes to your mind on storytelling? Because as you were saying, there might be many books around there, but is there something that says, oh yeah, I remember this book? It would definitely be the top of my list.
Well, the one top of my list and closest to my heart is by my colleague, but it's in Polish. So I'm thinking about publishing in English, but so far it's not. So I'm afraid I won't help you with the specific title at the moment. However, I've read a few of those, and I'm sort of humble in the approach that I think most of those I've read were good. That's what I'm trying to say. And if you want to model. You want a title, so I'll give you any book by Professor Spencer Johnson, Who Stole My Cheese, being the most famous about managing change or going through change. And he writes all his books as short stories, and they are so wonderfully wise and simple in getting them across the message. So anything by Spencer Johnson would be a good book to model on. And if you want to learn about the fundamentals, just pick up any book, and the one by Chris Filarski is an amazing one if you speak Polish. And if not, I don't know. Just write to him, perhaps you'll make him publish it in English. So
Absolutely. So talking about these things, we always like to know as well, because most of our guests always have, within gamification is a specialty in and of itself, of course, but within gamification, we tend to be maybe better at some things than others. And that's where we get the idea of the superpower. That thing that, maybe you're not the only one in the world who has it, but you're probably better at least than most other people. What would that be for Arek Siechowicz?
Wow.
Humbling question, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What do you say to that? You are a genius in what? I think my mind, the way my brain works, sometimes surprises me, and some people find it useful that I'm quite able in connecting the dots in between different worlds, different industries, between different applications. Like I can hop on a plane, and when I travel, I can notice something that I can use in a gamification because the way they sort of, greet and meet people on the plane. I mean, it's not a specific example, but what I'm trying to say is that I sort of connect different worlds and find synergies between them and application from one industry or one sort of specialty into another And I really love it when it happens, when such synergy happen. And like great, it's quite famous example of gamifying a recycling bin by adding those arcade game style sounds and lights to it, or gamifying I think it's a huge medical machine where you scan brain scanner. Probably there is a better name for it, but a proper one. But forgot about MRI. Yeah. So it happened in a few hospitals around the world where they added a narrative to a brain scanner for children, and they painted it, and the kids were much more likely to lie still, not move during the process, and be much less stressed, because someone thought that medical procedures and stories are not that very different worlds, that they can connect and they can create a synergy. So I think I'm really good at connecting worlds, and that would be my...
Makes sense. In fact, there is a talk by Marigo Raftopoulos. I'm not sure if it's a talk. It's probably... No, actually, it is the episode on the podcast where she spoke, and she said that game design, we as gamification, as gamification consultants, designers, we get inspired in games. And game designers get inspired in real life. So they get inspiration from real life, and we get inspiration from them. So in the end, what we are doing is we're getting inspiration from life itself. So it makes a lot of sense, Arek, getting all those things from around the world. And now comes the difficult question, and no cheating, none of your games, none of your gamified structures. What would you say, Arek, is your favorite game?
My favorite game. If I could have an honorable mention, I would go to Dixit. Dixit being a sort of a card-based game, offline one, and it's amazing how it opens up minds of adults and kids, and one of the perfect games to play with different age of players. But my favorite, the one I'm playing the most, this is the simplest question, if you just measure the time I spend on it, is a very simple, well, not that very, but it's a Clash Royale. It's an Android mobile game by Supercell. They're a studio, I think one of the biggest now. And I think it says something that I've been playing this very game for 5 years now. And it's the only game that is on my phone, as in constantly. Sometimes off professional duty, I download and play some other game. But that's the one I play for 5 years every week for a few minutes. And it's greatly designed because actually, if you look at it carefully, it is a modern version of chess. It's what I've noticed recently, only recently, that it actually plays to the same sort of elements and strategies. Perhaps it's not that you can play it not being a very sophisticated player, but you can actually go up on many levels. And there are the stories that for someone 500 years ago, when they played chess, that board would liven up. It would be a story of a battle. And Clash Royale, and before that, Clash of Clans, they are the games that are playing to that same narrative, I think. So it's a silly game, but if an adult person plays it something for 5 years, that means that they've done something good.
Well, I'm going to confess I am playing right now not Clash Royale, but Clash of Clans. I actually have my own clan as well.
Hey,
so
there we go.
Not 5 years, not even close. To be, again, transparent, the mobile games was something that was very unattractive to me. I didn't like very much the idea of playing games in my mobile, but I'm getting sticky hands now with my mobile with some of those games. One of them, of course, is Clash of Clans. So when you said that, I was like, oh, I'm sure it's the other part of the Clash of Clans, Clash Royale. Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. And Arek, before we take off, before we leave, do you have any final piece of advice? Then please, of course, let us know where we can find out more about you, about Gamehill, about the fantastic things that you're doing, and then we'll say that it's game over.
Okay, so my last words would be boys and girls, guys, don't give up on gamification. When I first discovered this great idea of gamification, I thought it will take the world by a storm. I mean, I thought that everything will be gamified by 2018. And it wasn't, unfortunately. There is still a group of people who believes in that, and it's growing. It's growing slowly but surely. And sometimes people can get disheartened with the idea because they don't get support. But almost every implementation of gamification I've seen in my life, and I'm talking about all very, very, very different approaches and very different applications, has been great, and it's been improving the experience of the users. So gamify things, don't give up, and we'll make the world better, because gamification is a great tool to do that.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, and it goes right into the heart of what we think, of what we do here as well in Professor Game, and that's how we spread the word, so to speak, right?
Yay! Yeah,
that's what we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing.
Gamification for the masses.
Gamification for everyone. Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Arek, thank you very much for being with us today. This has been a pleasure to be able to share with you this space, this time. However, at least for now and for today, it is time to say, actually, before we say it's game over, you didn't tell us where we can find you. Where can we find out more about you and about Gamehill?
There's a website, thegamehill.com, obviously, and there is I think LinkedIn is where I'm most active. I'm not that active Twitter user, but on LinkedIn with Arkadiusz Siechowicz, I hope you can sort of share my handle somewhere in the notes of the episode. So find me there, and we'll get connected. We'll take it from there, and we'll have a great chat, or perhaps I can give you some advice, or we can have a project, whatever. Just reach out, because I love the gamification community, and I've met so many friends, including you, Rob. We've met a few years ago, and it's always fun because we meet all of a sudden in Berlin, in London, in Amsterdam, in Warsaw. No, we haven't met in Warsaw yet.
No, I've actually been to Warsaw only once at this point.
So don't come in winter because you freeze. You might freeze, but come in summer or spring. It's beautiful. Pete Jenkins was in Warsaw. I've met him in Warsaw as well. But you have to come again, and everyone else as well. Just reach out to me, and we'll have some fun.
For sure. So thank you once again very much, Arek, for investing this time in the engagers and spreading that experience, that knowledge that you have of the world of gamification. However, as I said before, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, engagers, thanks for listening. How are you listening to this podcast? If you're doing it through any podcasting app, most of them have something that is called subscribe and or rate. Please go ahead and do so if you haven't. That way we are able to reach more engagers like you so that we can achieve together this mission of making learning amazing. If you need any sort of instructions, you can go to professorgame.com/iTunes and you'll get a couple of apps there. And of course, before you go on to your next mission, remember to do this. Remember to subscribe and rate using your favorite podcast app so that you can listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.